Hello and welcome to GPTV on Tuesday, the 27th of July. My name's Philip Kingston.
I'm Gary Peer.
And Gary, I'm coming to you today from my couch. I'm sitting on the couch and it's taken me some time, as you know, because we've been trying to get the right angles for quite some time. I've finally got the right light on my lovely, lovely face. You, on the other hand, Gary, look like you've had a big night on the red wine. Because you've got that old drunk look with the red face. What is going on with your red face today?
You know what? I think it's the color because I blew my nose a few times. I'm not sure if I've gone red because of that or because of frustration in trying to get this Zoom link up and going. I'm certainly not sunburnt, I can assure you of that. But yes, I wish I had a better story to share with you, Philip, but I don't. That's the truth.
Well, Gary, you've got that old drunk look, you know, those old guys that sit at the bar literally 24/7, 365. They get that very red-faced look. So it's not, you know, you still look handsome. I just want you to know that you still look lovely.
And they talk to themselves, Phil. When someone walks in the bar, they have a look at them like, what are you doing here? That sort of look. Is that it?
Yep. Gary, what an amazing week we've had, yet another lockdown week. Let's hope that July 2021 is the last lockdown month that we have to go through in Melbourne, because goodness knows we're all tired of it. But whilst the responsible GPTV viewers are tired of lockdown, and we're sick of making political comments and slamming the politicians, we're all done with that. But GPT viewers would not have gone to the march on the weekend, because what was that all about, Gary? What's the world coming to when they have a march for freedom, which is possibly a super spreader event, and then culminating in punching a horse? Well, what's the world coming to?
Look, I understand the feeling about wanting to punch a horse because I had two run on the weekend and I love them dearly, but gee, it was frustrating. But maybe it was a jockey I should have punched. I don't know. Anyway, don't give up on order of command. You know, as an honourable eighth, but it will go well down the straight in Flemington, Philip. The national choice. A couple of horses are going to do well eventually. If anyone's got any money left for backing them. But Phil, I think that's a little bit exaggerated. I think the guy was pushing the horse away, and it looked like he punched the horse. I'm not sure he punched the horse.
Well, the word on all of the media, of course, is that the bloke punched the horse. Now, whether it's true or it's not true, the question is that man now Australia's most hated person?
Well, I think the order in Australia of importance is first the footballers. I think the horses are pretty close behind them, Phil.
Yeah. I mean, a bloke that goes out for a day out and culminates in punching out a horse, I don't want to meet that bloke, quite frankly. Although, if he had a house for sale, would I act for him? Absolutely, yes.
Of course you would, and you never know, he might need to sell his house to fund his legal fees, Phil. But look, this whole concept of peaceful protests, you know, you turn on the news and they say what started as a peaceful protest. I'm not sure if there's ever such a thing as a true, genuine, just had a peaceful protest where people made their point. There were no police. They just went along in a beautiful, calm way with zen and positivity, and that was the end of the protest. It just never seems that a peaceful protest ends like a peaceful protest.
I mean, it should be banned, the use of peaceful and protest in the same sentence.
Well, it's like that. It's like the Western when the guy walks in, Phil, through the saloon door.
That's right.
We don't want any trouble around here. You just know.
I'm not looking. We're not looking for any trouble. Yeah.
You know the place is going to get shot up in about 30 seconds time or within 5 minutes. But it's the same sort of thing. Peaceful protest. Phil, I want to share something with you. I'm getting away from the sales and results from the weekend, and so many people tune in for the banter that others will just have to wait. But I did go for some exercise, Phil, a walk with Leo Samuel.
You went for some exercise?
Yeah, I did. I went for some exercise. I walked with Leo Samuel. We walked together. I don't think there's any problem. I don't think I'm breaching anything doing that.
Well, there is. You're actually technically not allowed to do that. But anyway, in the interest of just a good show, humour us.
So I walked from a distance from Leo Samuel, right? He was, let's say that we were both walking on our phones, doing exercise and still communicating with each other.
No. Let's, in the interest of abiding with the law, just say this. You walked out your front door going for a walk on your own. At the same time as Leor Samuel was walking past your house with no prearranged, there was nothing prearranged here. He just happened to be walking past your house. And for the next hour and a half, you actually happened to just walk with a distance between the two of you in the same, it was purely by coincidence, of course. You just walked right around for the next hour and a half. He turned left, coincidentally, you turned left. You turned right, coincidentally, he turned right. That's a legal walk with Leor Samuel.
Yes, and we're spaced apart, so we did have to expel some energy in our lungs, talking to each other from a distance, Phil, which I think you're allowed to do. But
correct.
As we walked on this coincidental spaced walk separately but together, communicating at a safe distance, he turned around and looked at a house and said to me, "That house has a ghost or ghosts." Which sends a chill down my spine because I'm always a little bit fearful of the paranormal, Phil. But I also wondered at the time, and apparently it was sold. It wasn't sold by our company, so you can relax, Phil. You can call off the lawyers. Wasn't sold by our company, sold by another company. But the story was that the vendor had a ghost or ghosts in the house. The buyer has bought
what, like a pet ghost, or this? I mean, you can't say the vendor had a ghost in the house. I think you can say the house had a ghost, but it's not like people can keep a pet ghost, Gary.
Well, it wasn't a pet ghost from what I understand. I mean, look, one doesn't know if it's proven that there was a ghost. It certainly wasn't on the chattels in the contract, light fitting.
Can you give us the name of the street? I don't want you to point the house out, Gary, but can you give us the name of the street?
I don't think I want to do that, Phil, because I don't want to implicate the vendor in a potential non-disclosure. And let's just say, Phil, that there was a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, a number of years ago, who sold a home and also was of the belief that there was a ghost in the house that they sold. Now, this is an interesting topic. And by the way, Phil, interesting topics get picked up from this show.
Yes. Yes.
We were mercilessly plagiarized the other day when we had on GPTV the topic of does a street name affect its value? And lo and behold, in no time, I won't say where, and you don't need to say where, but one of the major media outlets picked that up and ran it as a story. Didn't have the mercy or the I won't say respect because that's a bit. We didn't have the kindness to call us or the humility to call us for our commentary. That's okay. We don't mind. We're happy.
No, Gary, I've got to just jump in here. Yeah. This woman. This young woman is a very
person.
No. We're just going to call it this. This young woman is a very, very competent journalist. Yeah. Also a really good person to talk to. I've spoken to her on a number of occasions, and I would rate her very highly as a journalist and certainly somebody to look out for. I'm actually going to give her a call and or maybe I'm just going to do a bit of a shout out. Hey, somebody starting with S, just maybe a lot of the things that you see in the newspaper, Gary, do have their origins in GPTV, is what you're trying to point out.
Well, like to say, imitation is very flattering, Philip. So we don't mind. We're happy to share our stories and share our thoughts. And this will no doubt get a run as well. But I'm going to open up a topic here, Phil, that's a bit taboo, that's a bit spooky, that's a bit scary, it's a bit unspoken about, Phil, but what is the duty of a vendor to disclose a paranormal activity in their house? And if they pass it on to the agent, what is the duty of the agent? Maybe, Phil, we should get a lawyer and an expert in the paranormal on the show to discuss it, because I think it would be interesting.
Gary, I think you're onto something here. I think this is really good. There is, and we should have a lawyer on to actually explain to our viewers. And I think it's actually really sensible. Lawyers that are watching, please. We'll have you on the show, but we want to get a bit of a bidding war from lawyers that are watching, because obviously if they come on the show, it's going to do wonders for their practice. But there's a thing called material fact, Gary. So there used to be, there is a consumer law was always based on let the buyer beware. But now there is much more onus on the vendor of a property to disclose what is regarded as material fact. And I think we should have a lawyer on the show, Gary, to talk about material fact, because the question, Gary, is is paranormal activity in the house regarded as material fact which must be disclosed to a potential buyer?
It's a fantastic topic, Phil. I love it because it's full of controversy and opinion and views, and the imagination runs wild with stuff like this. And I got to say,
journalists starting with a name, with the first name starting with S, if you're watching this and we see an article on paranormal activity in houses and material fact, we know that we are your greatest source.
Phil, the story, of course, is, or the question is, there's a ghost in my house. When I sell, do I tell the agent? When I tell the agent, do they have to tell the buyers? Can it be proven? Does it need to be disclosed? Because a ghost is one of those things you can't see, Phil. It's a presence. And by the way, this friend of mine that lived in a home was telling me about the ghost, which was a woman, apparently in a white flowing dress in an old period home.
You just said you can't see them, Gary. So how would he have known? If you can't see a ghost, how would he know that this ghost was in a white flowing dress?
He saw the image of the ghost, Phil. But what would happen is that this friend of mine would sit in the bathroom and the toilet roll would just start mysteriously unraveling. The light would go off. The door would shut. And this friend of mine was a bit spooked out by that, Phil. But this friend of mine also happened to say that it wasn't a ghost that he felt that was an evil spirit or an unhappy presence. In fact, this person thought it was almost a protective spirit, Philip, a protective, loving, if you will, motherly, maternal, ghostly presence in the house. So, maybe the house could have got more for that for someone's living.
Well, Gary, I'm going to cut this short because there's been a lot of talk recently about mushrooms and the psychedelic properties of mushrooms. Clearly, your friend is a mushroom enthusiast because ultimately, if you are watching this show, viewers, and you do have a ghost at home, I'd just keep it to yourself because ultimately, proving material fact about a ghost, lawyers, knock yourselves out, come on board, come on the show. Let's talk about whether it is material fact or not. What's not material fact though, Gary, is people's ability to be abusive. And I'd like to have a little, this is going to be Phil's rant.
I know, it's your beef. Put it as Phil's beef.
Phil's beef. Look, there's no question, Gary, I'm regarded as somewhat of a controversial auctioneer. Right? There's no question I push the boundaries. There's no questions that some things that I think are humorous may in fact not be humorous at all and may be downright insulting to people. But I have over the last decade tried to be a more inclusive, happy, positive, feel-good auctioneer while still pushing the boundaries. I just want to talk about.
Well, I think I have to say that you come from a place of love. And I want to say that, Phil, because, I don't always defend you, and God knows I have a lot of time giving it to you, as you do me, and we do that with fun and love. But I have to say that I think you are very much a fair, inclusive, and positive, loving auctioneer. I've got to say that.
Would it be fair to say, Gary, that 90% of the crowd come with me?
No, I think that's right, Phil. I think
So ultimately, look, I'm always going to alienate perhaps 10% of a crowd. But look, Gary, we had a Zoom auction on the weekend, and Zooms tend to be working very well for us. And maybe we should deconstruct this next week to Zoom or not to Zoom. But I want to talk about the Zoom auction that we did. We had a great Zoom auction, Gary, where it was a Zoom auction for Emma Street in Caulfield South. Shout out to the vendors who did very well. Shout out to the buyer, Ray, who bought a great property. And I've got to tell you, I got to the end of that auction and I kind of pressed end meeting and I thought, yep, no, Phil, you did a great job there. Very satisfied with that. Everyone goes home a winner, including Wilson, who got a bottle of whiskey. More about that later. But I was pretty happy with the way that went anyway. Shock and horror, Gary, shock and horror. But literally 5 minutes after selling that property, you get an email from one of the participants of the Zoom auction. By the way, we know who you are, even if you did send your criticism about me in from an anonymous email. I mean, please, people with a second email address, you always have to worry about them. Anyway, this man says to you, Philip Kensington, clearly he's not paying that much attention to me as an auctioneer that he calls me Philip Kensington, although I do rather like the name. He says to you, Gary, Philip Kensington is a moron. Please beep that part out. But obviously you can get the context and you can probably see my lips move. Philip Kensington is a moron. And, went on to say some other uncomplimentary things. My question, Gary, to you and the viewers is it really appropriate to give that level of negative feedback to a bloke that's just going about his business, trying to get a job done and trying just to do the best he can?
Look, firstly, Philip, I think he must have been talking about another auctioneer, because he did say Philip Kensington, and that's not you. So firstly, it wasn't a slanderous comment. It was only made to me. Was neither libelous, or I do feel sorry for Philip Kensington, whoever he is. Having said that, Phil, look, this is the world we live in. It's ugly online, Phil. When we grew up, if you had something to say, you'd say, come and say it to my face, mate, or you'd say it to their face. That was the sort of bravado that was out there. It was a different era, a different generation. And of course, we've lost, John Cornell, or just, in context of this, because he was a great Aussie larrikin who reminds us of our childhood, of how we used to deal with things, laugh things off. It was the days of being non-political. But today, people go online, they are nasty, they do, let rip with comments that are meant to be hurtful from those that are hurtful. And of course, there are people with, thin skins that, you hear terrible things about how they deal with comments like that. So yes, he could have kept his comment to himself. He decided to share it. From our point of view, Phil, it just is water off a duck's back, because we're just going about our business and, like whatever.
And the worst part about it, Gary, and I'm still, you can probably hear my voice start to quiver here, because I am getting somewhat emotional here. People think that because I've got this air of bravado, because I seem to have this somewhat arrogant view of the world and arrogant way of being, behind that arrogance, Gary, behind all of that, I'm a person too.
Yes, he bleeds. You'd be cutting, he bleeds. And I mean, that arrogance and that confidence, it's just a facade for a deep feeling, generous, kind.
Well, you got to remember, viewers, I'm a little kid from Cootamundra that grew up with bright orange hair and freckles, right? Like, I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe there'll be some reflection from our participant of the auction. And look, again, Phil, as we know, in the heat of anger, we say things that we sometimes regret, and we sometimes get a little bit, it's like in an argument. I've learned in an argument, you just got to take a deep breath, think about it, walk away, come back, and then, let rip.
Of course, I'm going to be the bigger man, Gary. I'm going to find this bloke. I'm going to find him. He's going to hear from me in a very nice, warm, inclusive, sharing, non-arrogant way.
Fair enough. Well, you know what? You don't, as I say, you don't argue with a man with a microphone. But look, let's just move on, Phil. We've said enough today about ghosts.
Well, can we just have a quick chat about Zoom auctions, Gary?
Yeah, let's do that. Zoom auctions. Well,
to Zoom or not to Zoom?
Well, I think
that is the question.
I think we'll save the debate for next week, because we need some content anyway for next week, Phil. So we don't want to, use it all up here. I think we'll stick with the ghosts, and we'll stick with the abuse and abusive ghosts and gentle ghosts. Let's talk about some of our results that went on Zoom, because 16 Parang Grove was auctioned on Tuesday night on Zoom, Phil, and what a ripper auction that was. Expected to get somewhere in that 1.6 area of price. Undisclosed, but let's say it ran away and got far more than that. I think there was something like 5 or 6 bidders there, Phil.
There were, Gary, and one thing that I really like to say here is, look, it went really well. We did sell it for well in excess of the reserve. Having said that, it really was a fantastic property, and those are the properties that, when we talk about record prices, some buyers get a little bit upset because they say, I paid a record price and now you're talking about it. Very rarely does a property that's not incredible, right, get a record price. It's always the best properties that get a record price. So I don't think there's any shame in a buyer saying, there's no shame in paying a record price for something that is really good. And that was a really good property. I just want to make the note here, and of course to that abusive fellow that hates Philip Kensington, so he actually understands I'm a caring, sharing human being. I spoke to the vendor afterwards, nicest people, sisters, and this was a property that their father had built, and they were somewhat emotionally connected to the home. And it was so lovely after the auction, speaking to the two sisters, and I did it via FaceTime, so there was that connection. It was just so lovely because they were both very moved by, obviously, not just the price, but by the fact that it was kind of kudos to their father that had built the place, and they really felt it was really, I think that's one of the nicest parts of our job, Gary, is that we get to be part of people's very emotional journeys. And sometimes it does kind of bring you close to tears when you see somebody's true emotions. It was lovely.
It does, Phil, and we get that emotional journey, that journey, or that ride, that emotional ride, together with buyers and sellers, Phil, of course. And I know that when properties sell for record prices, I've paid record prices. I was laughed in the office when I bought a home in Elsternwick many years ago, paid more, but and when I bought some land afterwards, paid more than anybody had paid. So record properties deserve record prices, Phil, and it's always so often that we get attacked for underquoting because you just cannot quote a record price for something that hasn't been achieved yet. But so it's impossible to ever quote a record price for a property, but it's certainly possible to achieve it when there's competition, and of course to be attacked for that as well is another challenging part of our business, because you'll have 20 auctions, you'll get on a weekend, you'll get 2 of them that sell for record prices, and lo and behold, they will be seized upon and you'll be under attack for them. Yet if you went out and appraised them at those prices, you probably wouldn't get the job, and if you pitched them at those prices, those record prices, you wouldn't get any interest in them either. So it's always the ongoing challenge of the
So absolutely. So Zoom auction in Paran Grove went very well. Zoom auction in Emma Street went particularly well, except for obviously that Philip Kensington abusive comment, which I'll get over one day. And a very good Zoom auction in also Snowden Avenue, where we had, I think there were 5 participants that actually bid on screen at Snowden Avenue. There were around 10 different bidders on Emma Street, which is really incredible to see that level of uptake. And on Paran Grove, I think there were 5 or 6 as well, Gary. A couple of things quickly, because this is a very, very long episode, Gary, going on and on. A couple of things I just want to mention, Gary. I'm going to launch something new on GPTV. Haven't floated it past you, but I think it's a really good idea. Brought to me by a friend of mine who, until he lets me know, until he says I can use his name, I'm just going to refer to him as a friend of mine, has said, why don't we have a segment on GPTV which is about supporting local business? And I thought it was a really good idea, and he has offered to kick it off. So viewers, we want to have a segment, support your local business. I'm just going to float this, Gary, put it out there now for you to use your genius marketing and come up with a story or a segment around this. But I think that it's a great opportunity, and particularly as a result of the difficulties that we're all going through. If you've got a local business that you think is a standout leader in looking after community, I want to have a support your local business segment, and we'll have prizes. So we're going to put some budget around this, Gary.
And I think we should have some, get those businesses to offer the GP viewers something special, Philip, a discount.
Oh, you're always just trying to get a segment sponsored and paid for, aren't you?
No, I'm looking after our viewers, Phil. The viewers come first. That's what it's all about, Phil. It's always about the viewers and the consumers. Phil, I also just want to say we did have something in Phil's mailbag. We should probably put it up quickly.
Yes, fascinating, actually.
Yeah, there was somebody, and it was a fair and reasonable comment too. Somebody did ask the question, and they said, look, there's an auction. They went to the auction, or they understand that the auction, they want some clarity around the quote price, because a property had a price guide of 7 to 770, and then it was an offer for 785, and the vendor then said 825 is the price. And they're not saying it was underquoted. They want to understand what happened. Well, firstly, to the person that wrote in, thank you. We'll just call him Adam because that's his name. Thank you, Adam. What actually happened at that property was the price guide did go up before the auction, firstly, so it was passed in within the new price guide, and the reserve is within the new price guide. But it is difficult for vendors when they're selling something and all of a sudden a week before their sale, a very similar result happens. A new price is set and they turn around and say, well, look, I thought I might want to get 750, but an identical property just sold this week for 8 or 825. I now am setting my sights on that price, and I'm instructing you to put the price guide up. Now, those cynics that point the finger at agents won't believe it, but the reality is that vendors do change their expectations through a course of a campaign, through results that happen. And fair enough, and then we get instructed accordingly, and there's not much we can do about it. So,
well, markets, Gary, of course, are dynamic. That is, they change from week to week. But not only are markets dynamic, Gary, and you've used the example of another sale happened within that time frame. So they said, my property's as good as that, so I now want this, which is entirely their right to do so. But vendor circumstances also change. I've had situations, Gary, where we've had, call it husband and wife, just for the argument, where husband's been really keen to sell, wife's been less keen, and before the auction they've come up with the reserves based on, well, the wife says, look, if we get this price we'll sell. The husband says, well, look, I just want to move on, or vice versa, or two partners have just one's changed their mind. So the markets are dynamic, but also a vendor's circumstances dynamic. Price guides essentially are a snapshot window of the value range where we're expecting maximum interest, but it does not obligate a vendor to sell within the range. Having said that, at Gary Peer and Associates, hand on heart, we try to encourage our vendors to go with a range which will reflect their selling intentions. But markets and vendors' circumstances do change through the 4-week process.
Yes, things are fluid, but I think you wrapped that up really well, Phil, because some people say, oh, it's going to sell for more, and by the way, a lot of the people that say it'll sell for more are never interested in it particularly, or bid for it, but they do have that view a lot of the time. And absolutely, we ask our vendors when we quote a range, we'd like to be sure that you'll consider this range. We're informed that they will, but their circumstances can change. Other results can change their situation. Maybe they thought they would buy something, they could afford to sell it for X, and then they found they couldn't. So there's all sorts of things. Let's move on through the results, Phil, because lots to get through, lots to talk about. And thanks, Adam, for your question. I hope that answers it, and maybe send us an email in questioning it further, or saying that's fair enough for you. Phil, we sold a unit at 43 Snowden Avenue, Philip. The price is disclosed, and it was sold for $2,680,000, which was more than expected, Phil, but a lot of competition, a rare block of land, north facing at the back. And land is re-evaluating itself all the time as we move forward. Philip, we sold a property at number 16 Cambridge Street in Caulfield North. Well done to Jacob Kingston on that sale. We've got the boys doing a few deals this week because Daniel Peer was involved in Snowden and Jacob Kingston in Cambridge. Glenn Bricker sold 32 Paran Grove off market, Philip, or before auction, a beautiful property. We've got some images of all of these properties on the screen as we're talking. And 6 at 304 Creon Road was also sold for an undisclosed amount.
Gary, I'm not going to go through all of the sales, but I just want to bring to our viewers' attention that we have a project marketing division, which is run essentially by Julian Millman together with Rafi Joffe, Jacob Kingston, and Lisa Alberts. They've just had the most incredible week. Like, lockdown doesn't mean anything to them because they're selling properties off the plan. So it's not as though, hey, would you like to come and inspect this piece of air over here? They're selling properties. There's the address, but here are all the plans, here are all the images. We've just had the most phenomenal week in our project marketing division. So viewers, if you're thinking about, upsizing, downsizing, buying an investment, have a chat with the team in our project marketing division, because that part of our business, Gary, is starting to develop some real momentum.
Phil, we need to move on to property preview. You're right, by the way, just before I move on, the team, the off the plan team. And if you're looking at selling off the plan, you better speak to our team because they're doing it great. Phil, let's move into some of our auctions this week. We're not waiting till the weekend at 5:30 on Thursday. We hope on site. Otherwise, probably it'll be Zoom, Phil. 4 at 74 Hawthorne Road, great position there, just opposite the park. This wonderful 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 1 car and courtyard property, Philip, is going up for auction, and that's going to be, we think, very popular. Phil, on Saturday, just before auctions there, we've got 3 of them booked in for 10:30 a.m. Well, actually 2, because one of them's moved off, but we've got 23 Lysander Street, McKinnon, a great looking property in a wonderful location.
What a great address. We've talked about that property before, Gary, but beautiful renovation there. You've got to get to that property, just even to have a look at it, because it's stunning.
We've got, Phil, a snap purchase there at 11 at 51 Union Street, Windsor, a great address. Jeremy Rosen's auctions, that one.
I think that's apartment, that's 10, isn't it? 10 at 51?
It is 10 at 51, if I didn't say that. I should have. Thanks for correcting me. Phil, Graham Callan's a busy gentleman. He's going to be in Murrumbina Road at 2:30, selling this terrific property, 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, 1 car. And on Sunday, Phil, we've just got the 3 scheduled at the moment, 7 at 364A. Carlisle Street, St Kilda Reese. It's a terrific 2-bedroom affordable apartment. Leon Guzenfitter has been involved, and Jeremy Rosen's auctions, and you have the opportunity to auction one of the most spectacular properties, presuming it goes ahead. All of these auctions are presuming that they go ahead, that we're able to do it, that they're not postponed, that we can do it on site, we might do it on Zoom. So just stay in touch. But 441B Glenira Road, Phil, is one of the most spectacular properties in the Caulfield area.
Check out the video on that, viewers, because that is really just the most stunning home. It's got absolutely everything that opens and shuts, including a basement garage with a turntable, no less, a lift that takes you across all the levels, a swimming pool. This is like the Big Mac of homes, because I don't think there's anything that this property hasn't. Well, I suppose it hasn't got a helicopter landing pad, Gary, which is somewhat disappointing. But other than that, I think it's got everything.
If you can get past the helicopter landing pad issue, Phil, you should go and have a crack at that. Speak to Maxine Pekarski. She's loved selling it. She sold the one next door. It's a beautiful property and a real rarity in Caulfield North. 441B Glenira Road. A bit of paradise, Phil, a bit of an oasis, a Caulfield North oasis. Phil, at 3:30 p.m. 60 to 62 Northgate Avenue, Caulfield North. Now that's a great address and a very
well, Gary. That's a couple of opportunities for the price of one, because you've got a brick pair, 2 houses on the one title. So if you're an investor or a developer, what a great investment! 2 houses, 2 lots of tenancies. It's also a great block of land that's north facing at the rear, and Northgate Avenue on the north side of Northgate Avenue is a really good. Try saying that after a few vodkas, but that's a great property, great opportunity. Love that address.
Phil, that's a big wrap for the weekend. We've got a couple of other properties that I just want to talk a little bit about, because they are pretty exceptional. This 123 Bamborough Road, Caulfield, Phil, just want to review that quickly.
If you're going to live in Bamborough Road and you like going out at night and you like having a few drinks, and you're going to take an Uber home because you're going to be responsible. I mean, if you're going to live in Bamborough Road and you've had a few drinks, what better address to give the Uber driver than 123?
It's as easy as 123, Phil, and that's a great property and great opportunity. Phil, is a very versatile home I want to talk about for a second. We haven't had the chance to open it yet because the last 2 weeks have been in lockdown, so I just want to call out about this property. 4 Sebastopol Street, Caulfield North, Phil, is a great position. This is a nice block of land too that this home's situated on, some 547 square metres, Phil. The home is definitely livable, lettable, improvable, or removable. How's that? Just came to me on the spot, Phil.
Livable, let's do it again. Livable, lettable,
improvable,
or removable.
There you go.
Gary, you really are a poet.
Well, I didn't know that, Phil. I'm finding out, discovering even this late stage of life things about myself I never knew. But anyway, Phil, that's a great property. So if you're wanting to get through that or have a look at it, speak to Daniel Pierre or Viv Samuel, because that's a wonderful listing and an exciting opportunity, Phil. And what is it? An affordable entry level into land in Caulfield North. Phil, that's a bit of a big wrap on GPT. We've gone on too long. Got lots of properties to talk about next week as more auctions come rolling through. The market's still strong, though.
Gary, in conclusion, I think we've got to name this episode, because we always have a name of the episode, but is Philip Kingston more sensitive than we thought edition?
No, I think we're going to talk about ghosts instead, Phil. It's far more interesting. But that's a big wrap on GPTV for this late July. We'll see you in August for our next edition. I'm Gary Peer.
I'm Philip Kingston. Have a fabulous week. The last week of lockdown, we hope.
See you next week. Cheers.
Bye now.